a nice restaurant, a new movie, hell, maybe even your favorite vacation spot. There's so many different ways to have a good time. Well, I guess unless you're alone. Wait, hold up, that's not true. Yes, I know, I'm getting to that. That's like the whole point of this video. This is literally just the intro. Okay, I'm just making sure you tell them. Okay, yes, I will. Will you please go now? As humans, we're naturally social creatures. It's in our DNA to want to build a community and to share our thoughts and experiences with each other. This is how we build societies and friendships, and ultimately, this allows us to grow. Even more important, research shows that social interaction is essential for our physical and mental health. Some research even goes as far as saying that those who are less involved in social relationships are more likely to die early than those with greater involvement. Well, no wonder we're afraid to do things by ourselves. Apparently, if we do anything alone, we're gonna die. Okay, now if you're an anxious person like me, I don't want this video to scare you. It doesn't mean that if you decide to go eat lunch by yourself, you're gonna drop dead in the middle of the restaurant. This research is actually speaking more about the epidemic of loneliness and how this feeling of loneliness sometimes leads us to developing bad habits like drinking and smoking. And by now, it's not a surprise that these habits do lead to earlier deaths. Now, this may be shocking information, but another thing that really caught me by surprise was just how many people confuse loneliness with solitude. Loneliness is definitely a huge issue in our society, but I think it's been so overused through fear-mongering tactics that we finally reached a point where it's become this degrading word. It's almost like you can't admit that you're lonely without feeling embarrassed. It's almost as if loneliness is some deadly disease that can be passed to anybody that spends time alone. And naturally, we start to assume that anybody that spends time by themselves must be lonely. I mean, there's no way they're not miserable, right? Our social norms have taught us that if anybody chooses to do anything alone, they must be strange. Or maybe they don't have friends. Or maybe they don't have friends because they're strange. But really, why is it socially unacceptable to do things by yourself? Loneliness is a feeling. It's the feeling of something missing or being sad or unhappy about isolation. It's like a lack of connection or belonging, desiring more connection with others than you feel you already have. Which means you can be surrounded by hundreds of people but still feel lonely, and to me, that may be the hardest kind of loneliness there is. Solitude, however, is being alone and content. This is something you choose to do because you genuinely enjoy your own company. To me, solitude is a place where you can completely be yourself because it lacks the demands from other people and the world around you. In short, solitude is basically being alone without feeling lonely. So if it's possible to be content with just yourself, why is there such a negative stigma around doing things alone? Okay, listen, I know in a lot of my videos I joke about society being the scapegoat for most of our world's problems, but in this case, it's actually true. Somehow, over time, activities like eating at a restaurant or going to the movies or even doing small stuff like walking around the mall or walking to a strip of bars have become things that you have to do with other people. If you see somebody eating alone in public, your first thought is to pity them. It's like, how can they be doing something like that without feeling shame and embarrassment? I wouldn't do that. How dare they eat by themselves? I bet they're lonely. I bet they don't have any friends, and I bet they have tons of cats at home. On a side note, I'm not even a huge fan of cats, but somehow even the cat people got unfairly lumped up in this loner status, and I'm here to say enough is enough. People are allowed to be comfortable with their own thoughts and company. And alone time doesn't mean you have to be locked up in your house where nobody can see you. Part of the reason people fear doing things alone is because people consistently underestimate how much fun they can have by themselves. In an experiment ran by 2 marketing experts, participants were invited to an art show where some were bunched into groups and others had to do the show by themselves. After a few hours of the event, the participants were surveyed and surprised to see that the people who were alone enjoyed themselves just as much, if not more, than the participants in the groups. In fact, the majority of the people who did the exhibit alone said that the experience made them more excited and willing to do things by themselves in the future. Humans are self-centered. I mean, no offense, but it's true. There's this phenomenon in psychology called the spotlight effect where people overestimate just how much other people are paying attention to their appearance or their behavior. And unfortunately, this causes so much social anxiety for some of us that we'd rather skip out on potentially enjoyable situations just to avoid a scenario that's highly unlikely to happen. And the irony is that we all think this way. The funniest part about it is that most people are so concerned with themselves and what other people are thinking about them that they don't have the time to pass judgment to somebody sitting at a table by themselves. I mean, be honest with yourself. The last time you saw somebody out in public by themselves, were you too busy thinking about them? 9 times out of 10 people either don't notice or they don't care. So it's not fair for you to miss out on activities because of this irrational fear. And even in that one chance where somebody does notice, it's gonna last 5 seconds at most, and then they're gonna move on with their life. In my experience, I've come to realize that you're not gonna have a meaningful interaction with anybody who's looking down on you, so why give a shit what they think anyway? Just like spending time with people, spending time with yourself also has its perks. When you're comfortable doing things alone, you get to do whatever you want to do, when you want to, and however you choose to. When you have nobody else to consider, you get to focus on making yourself happy. And honestly, I think we're all entitled to sometimes just not be in the mood to entertain somebody through an entire activity. This means you finally get to take a break from seeking validation from other people. And yes, that includes your friends and family, because let's be honest, half the damn time we're just out there trying to please them one way or another. And this gets to be exhausting, so being alone finally gives you a chance to recharge. And the more you do it, the more you're gonna start to notice some of the benefits, like time to reflect and being in tune with yourself. And best of all, it can actually help loneliness. Now, I know this sounds counterproductive, but no matter how social you are, there are gonna be times in your life where being alone is inevitable. That's just how life goes. So one way or another, you're gonna have to learn how to be comfortable with yourself before it's too late and you burn out. And when you start to practice solitude like this in an intentional way, you slowly start to become better at dealing with the lonelier parts of your life. Now, if you're nervous about doing things by yourself for the first time, here's a couple of tips for you. Number one is to remember that you can leave whenever you want. You are the only person there, so you're not obligated to give anybody an excuse. If things feel awkward, maybe this wasn't the right activity, this wasn't the right time to do it, maybe you're just not ready, get up and leave. Nobody's gonna stop you. Number two is to find a distraction. Think about this. Anytime you've ever been in an awkward situation, what is the first thing you do? If you're anything like me, you probably grab your cell phone and use it as a distraction. So when you're by yourself, do the exact same thing. Whip out your phone, bring a book, bring something to draw with. If you have to, bring a camera and film yourself, which may not be the easiest first task, but do something to distract yourself. What I started doing this last year was coming with a topic, something that I can keep myself distracted with the entirety of my activity. Maybe it was deciding my next tattoo, or what my next trip is gonna be, or how much money I need to save in the next coming months. But finding something like this to put your focus in makes it so much easier to drown out everybody else around you. And last but not least, find something that you can actually get excited about. Think about anything that you've always wanted to do, but you couldn't because people wouldn't go with you. Now is your chance to do anything you've ever wanted to do. But with that being said, I'm gonna encourage you to at least go out and do one activity by yourself this week. It can be anything you want, but just do one thing. And hopefully you find the enjoyment of doing things by yourself. I promise you, the more you do it, the more that self-consciousness turns into self-awareness, and life just becomes more enjoyable in every aspect. And if you are somebody that likes to do things in groups, then don't take this video personally. You are allowed to do whatever you want. I am just a guy on the internet trying to tell people that they can do whatever they want to. But just remember this, the joy and the satisfaction you find doesn't always have to be in other people. It can be in just the substance of the activity itself. But that is it. That is all I got for y'all today, so thank you so much for watching. Remember to go out and do your homework, do at least one activity by yourself, and report back to me by the next video. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see y'all next time.